Well, collectors, here we are again. Today is March the 13th, and we're finally starting to get some spring weather here in America. And I hope that all you people in Texas finally got dried out and heated up. It must have really been a disaster there, and I was feeling for you. I know what frozen pipes are because we have an old Victorian here. And when it gets into sub-temperatures, it's a big mess for me too, so I know the problem. But anyhow, hopefully by now you're all back in and we can start to enjoy the hobby again. This time we're still on the subject of swords. I want to try to cover army swords from the Third Reich, and also show you a little bit about Imperial Swords too, because that's an important facet of the hobby and very big in Europe and somewhat big here in America. I can only show you a few swords because there's literally hundreds of patterns, both in the Imperial time and the Third Reich time. So I'm going to start with Third Reich Army swords, and I'm going to try to show you just the basic patterns that we see. And before I do, there was just one thing in the comments that you guys make on the video, which I appreciate a lot. One guy said that he thought the quality of the artifacts was poor. Well, I just want to say last time we did field marshal swords, and the purpose of the seminar was to show you the different patterns of the field marshal sword. And I'm sorry if I didn't have all mint condition pieces, but that really wasn't the point. It was to show off the patterns. But just to show you that we do know what mint condition swords are, I should have showed you this in the last video, but I'll show it to you now. This is something from my personal collection that I'm very proud of. And I think that this will satisfy this man's desire for quality. And I pull this out of here. This is an acorn sword that still has all of the factory tags on it. It has the paper wrapping that was put on it. You'll see that it also has the acorn seal, the number of the sword 1716, which was the rune pattern. And then also it says the pattern on the tag. The sword is in absolute brand new condition, as you can see, absolutely beautiful. It really has everything. So I hope that this will satisfy that collector's comment that the quality wasn't very good. I'd like to see you get better quality than a piece like this. So that being said, we'll get on to other army patterns. I just want to put this sword away so nothing happens to it, because you know, after years the old paper gets fragile and so forth, and that's for my personal collection. So I'll just put this over here. And now we'll start with the army type swords. As you know, the Third Reich came in January the 31st, 1933, and at that point the sword makers had patterns that they had used from the Imperial time and the Weimar time, but it was necessary for them to upgrade to the symbols of the Third Reich. So first, what we see before I go into that, this particular sword, this is a Ordnance Pattern. It was a sword that was issued to NCOs for parade purposes, and it had to be given back when the NCO was done with it. And it's just a plain Jane sword, as you can see. But what collectors like about these, if you look at the top of the sword, it can come apart, and it is also numbered. The hilt portion of the sword is also numbered. It's an acorn piece. And the scabbard is also numbered to match. The scabbards were always a glued surface. I don't know whether we can see this number, but there's the number on the scabbard, which matches the sword. So these are kind of nice to have in a collection because it was representative of the period, and they are nice swords. This one, for some reason, the ferrule is cracked there. Of course, a porta-pee would be an easy fix there, and you'd never see it. So then, as I was saying, there was a rush for sword producers to come up with a Third Reich design. Now, in some cases, this particular sword was produced by WKC. It's a standard lion head pattern, and it was a pattern that they had made before Hitler's time. So in order to get something on the marketplace that they could sell, they put a silver Wehrmacht style eagle onto the languette. It's applied. And if you look behind the languette, you'll see where there's prongs that go through the languette and are bent over on the reverse. So these are nice swords to find. They're not common at all and very desirable. Now the basic designs that you see in Third Reich swords are a lion head, which here is a typical Horster lion head with glass eyes. Has the cat on the pommel, and an eagle and Hakenkreuz on the languette. All other swords that you see are mostly designed after the lion head type, except if they're a dove head, which this one is. This is a standard Alcozo pattern, very, very common. We see them all the time. So those are the two basic designs that you're going to see in all of Third Reich swords, but there are literally hundreds of them and lots and lots of makers that you can collect. As we said before, it was up to the officer to purchase his own sword, and they could go to whatever factory they wanted and select whatever model they wanted, whatever they could afford, and this is what they did. So then you see some other swords that are a little bit different in some ways, just a little more unusual. This particular sword I like a lot. It was made by Emil Voos. It's a lion head, and it has a fine eagle on the languette. But what else is good about it? You get a little more for your money because you have a additional Wehrmacht eagle on the P-guard. It's a pretty hard sword to find and very desirable because of those attributes. This one is made out of brass and gilded. Then we find designs where the eagle is more interesting on the languette. This is the case here with this particular sword. It was made by Anton Wingen. Wingen did not make a lot of swords, and they always had kind of unusual designs. So this is interesting. See how it has stubby kind of wings? You just don't see that much. And because of that, it's a very desirable collectible. You see that, how the wings are stubby? This next sword follows that same unusual pattern. This one was produced by Lunaschloss, who did not make many swords. And again, see how the wings are very stubby? You look at 100 swords before you see something like that. So they become very interesting to collectors. And then every once in a while you'll find designs that are meant to keep up with the Art Deco styles that were coming into effect at that time. And this one is very unusual. The first thing you notice is that it has a flat knuckle bow P-guard, but what really sets it off is the slant of the grip. See how that's done? Very, very chic looking, Art Deco all the way, and a very rare sword. Robert Klass was the only one I know that made a piece like this. Isn't that neat? And then from there, following in the Art Deco style, this is a piece by WMW. And what they did, they completely eliminated the ferrule. You'll see that the langet, the ferrule, and the crossguard, P-guard are all one single piece. A very, very interesting design, and quite a rare sword also. Lots of fun when you find that at a show, and maybe somebody's got it on their table for $400 or $500. It's a Nazi sword. Sometimes you can luck out that way on these kind of things if you know to look for something like that, because it's very, very unusual. WMW. And then we get into Holler. Also wanted to be involved in the Art Deco market, and this is their famous Holler 21 pattern. It's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful sword. The langet and the ferrule, the crossguard, are all one piece with one giant eagle taking up the whole area. And then on the hilt pommel, the lion, it looks like a mouse to me, but I love the look of it, the way the design is. Very, very Art Deco. Holler 21, that's a sword you want to get if you're collecting swords. Very, very nice piece. And then lastly, the ultimate in the Art Deco design. This was made by WMW also, but just look at how thrilling and captivating this whole crossguard area is, along with a very modern looking panther. Extremely unusual and very rare. This is an aluminum sword, was probably made about 1940, and not many were sold because of the war at that point. So this is a very valuable piece too. So those are designs that are a little different from the ordinary, and that's why I've shown them to you. We all know that each manufacturer had their own type of swords. They offered 2, 3, or 9, 10, or 12 different designs in some cases, and you can zero in on maybe one maker and try to collect all of their types. That's up to you. But collecting swords is it's a lot of fun, and it's always been a good part of the hobby. There are people that just collect swords, And as I told you before, the drawback is they're large, and you need a lot of wall space to display them, and also a honey or wife that's willing to put up with that, which is something we all have to worry about in this hobby. I know I've said it before, but you kind of sort of have to think about equal treatment. You know, if you're sneaking around and buying that $1,000 choice army sword, and then you try to get it home so she doesn't see it, and put it in your closet someplace or under your mattress, and then eventually she finds it, and you say, oh, I bought that at a flea market for $20, and oh, I forgot that was there, and all. So you're better off just to square up when you come in with that, and maybe bring a bunch of flowers or a little gift or something, just to show that you're not too self-centered. I know we're self-centered when it comes to this hobby. It's impossible not to be. But anyhow, just a word of advice. Has nothing to do with the hobby, but just life. So, okay, we'll end the army swords at this point then. Okay, collectors, next we're going to talk about Imperial Swords, another vast area. I want to just say a couple of things. We all know the Kaiser Wilhelm and was ahead of the Germany, of course, after the Franco-Prussian War. He was the Kaiser. But as I've said before, Germany consists of many different states. Brunswick, Bavaria, Prussia, Schleswig-Holstein, Saxony, on and on and on. And each one of those states had their own ruling person, whether he be a prince or a duke or whatever. And of course he was in control of the army in that particular state. So when the Franco-Prussian War happened and the Kaiser became the king of all of Germany, the armies of Germany were under his control totally if there were warfare, but only if there were warfare. During peacetime, these individual state armies were controlled by their individual governors, if you will. The Kaiser, of course, Prussia, where Potsdam was and where the Kaiser's palace was the biggest area, and they by far had the biggest army. But they had lots of regiments. Of course, you had infantry regiments, artillery regiments, dragoon regiments, Uhlan regiments, hussar regiments, on and on. And there were probably, if you added them all up, there must have been over 100 different regiments. But there were certain regiments that were in charge of, that the Kaiser was in charge of all of the time. And those regiments were called Guard, G-A-R-D-E. The name of the regiment is preceded by the word Guard, which indicates that it comes under the direct control of the Kaiser. So I hope that that you understand that, because it's kind of important. The way that Imperial Germany is set up is ultra complicated. But if you know these things, it's somewhat easier to identify Imperial Swords and kind of understand what their background was. So with that, we'll start. I'll show you some swords that I think are particularly nice, and something that you'll enjoy seeing. This is a artillery type sword. You can see that it has a smooth hilt throughout with shark skin grip and a nickel-plated scabbard. And we know that it would have been issued after 1906 because they changed the style in 1906. Prior to that, sword scabbards had 2 rings. So if this were made before 1906, it would have another ring. And then we'll also see swords where the band is still there, but the ring was taken off because the sword was worn after 1906. So this beautiful artillery piece, if I can show you this, it has a outstanding etched blade, and it gives all the information of what artillery regiment it came from. And you see it has the cross cannons at the bottom of the etch there. Just a lovely, lovely thing. And on the other side, it has a floral type design. And one other thing that I think I'm right about this, but when you see swords where the ring is stationary, in other words, it doesn't move, normally these are associated with NCOs, not officers. So this must have been worn by a high NCO. And then I'll show you a similar sword. This one has the standard black scabbard. It also has the stationary ring and the plain hilt. And here the NCO went to the expense of having his artillery regiment etched into the blade with a blue panel. He's actually from Silesia, which is now a part of Poland, but they used to do a lot of coal mining there and so forth. It lost Germany after World War II, and the reverse, I think, is just a normal etch, but beautiful stuff. So that's kind of that type of pattern. Then we get into the officer pieces. This is a what we call a grosser pattern. Why do we call it grosser? It's pretty obvious. It's so damn big. Look at the size of it compared to a normal sword. So if you had extra money, you could order a grosser pattern like this. In this particular case, it has cross swords. Cross swords always mean that it comes from cavalry. If you see crossed cannon, obviously it's artillery. These are not things you don't already know, but maybe somebody doesn't know, so I thought I would say that. But it also comes with just a beautiful, immense blade too. Just fantastic. It's not etched or anything, but the nickel plating is absolutely fabulous. So a sword like this, it could be cleaned up a lot too if someone wanted to. It's a real showpiece in a collection, and must have been pretty neat to wear around too, especially if you're a short guy like me. Made you feel like a big deal, I'll bet. So then we see the this is the model 1889 infantry officer sword. It has a basket hilt. Some hilts will be hinged so that the basket folds. They're finished in usually in a shark skin wrapped grip, and they, not always, but most of the time, they have the monogram of the Kaiser fit into the grip. Now in the case of this sword, as I was talking before about the number of rings, you can see here there's 2 carrying rings, so we know that this sword goes back to prior to 1906. I think it has just has a standard blade. On these Model 89s, the blade is always straight, and it has double fullers. Beautifully nickel plated, and just a just a great piece. This one also has the name of the original owner on it. I think we can see that with the camera. And when you have that, it's usually not difficult to find the information on their career, which we did look up on this piece. It also has the original portapee. So quite a nice Model 89. Now next we'll have a sip. But the next sword now, this is also a Model 1889 Infantry officer's sword. It has the 2 rings, so again we know it's pre-06, and as I was saying, they can have a folding clamshell. See how that is? That made it easier for storage. You know, you could hang it up in your little tiny closet. It's not going to get scratched. And it has the Kaiser's monogram. This one has an etched blade on it, just a floral design, which I think is on both sides. The spine was also etched, and on the other side, more etching. Beautiful work. And this is a grosser pattern, Model 89. Look at the beautiful Hohenzollern eagle there. That was the Prussian eagle with the Kaiser's coat of arms in the middle. Very elegant, beautiful condition. The Wilhelm II monogram. Extremely nice piece with the portapee. This one also has a blue scabbard instead of painted or nickel. It's very elegant with a plain blade having the double fullers. And we can see this was worn after 06 because of the 1 ring. Shark skin grip, you know, it's fun to find one when they're in this kind of condition too. Boy, you wonder whether they ever wore it and where it's been all these years to keep it this nice, but whatever the case, we're thankful for it. Okay, the next sword we're going to look at is a Model 89 that does have a folding basket hilt. And the sword, all Model 89 NCO swords, as this is, again, the stationary ring, they have the coat of arms of the state from which they come from. In the case of this example, it has the coat of arms of Mecklenburg. Most of these Model 89 swords will have the standard Prussian eagle on them because, of course, this is the biggest army. So that makes this kind of rare. So when you see a Model 89 without the standard Prussian eagle, you want to stop and look at it a little further because it's always going to be less common than a Prussian example. And when you look at the blade on this, the blade has a blue panel, and you can see it comes from a dragoon regiment in Mecklenburg. The NCO spent a little extra money to have that put on there. So, from there, we're going to go to, remember I mentioned that if the regiment that you belonged to was a guard regiment, it was a regiment that was under the direct command of the Kaiser. And normally when you see swords that were owned by officers of guard regiments or NCOs, they will have what we call a guard star on the langet. It consists of a star background with an enamel device in the center with a slogan, Sum Quid or something like that. This one has a jawless lion head with a nice sharkskin wrapping. And then on the blade, we can show it has a dedication. It appears that Fritz Scharf, S/L, Walter Kurtik. Now, what SL means, we'll see this on a lot of swords. It's an abbreviation for the word Seinen Lieben, and that meant in admiration of. So Fritz gave this sword to Walter because he was his friend and he liked him. And a lot of times Walter gave Fritz a sword in return. And these were the kind of things that in those days you had a mandatory service in the Army for 2 years. So when you got out, you could put this on your wall at home and brag about it every time some friends came over for beer. So we see a lot of these kind of swords, and they're very desirable. And I think there's something on the back. We also have the town and the date of 1912. Achlem is a town in Germany. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but in the case of this, since we have both of the names of the individuals as well as where they came from and the date, there's a good chance that a sword like this could be easily researched. So that makes it fun. And then you've all heard of the heavy cavalry. The heavy cavalry was mounted horsemen, and for the most part, these men were very big, very tall, and I think you had to be just to get on the horse with the weight. They wore these cuirass, heavy brass cuirass, and the beautiful lobster tail helmets. I mean, just fantastic guys. And we call their swords a palish. Palish. And this is an example of a palish from the heavy cavalry. And when you look at a heavy cavalry sword, it has these three bars in the hilt. See how that's made? That's indicative of a heavy cavalry sword, and it also has a sharkskin grip. As I said, these men were very big. This sword is immense. It has at least a 35-inch long blade, and then when we look at the blade, there's an additional surprise here. The blade is etched with a blue background, and you can see it says Regiment der Garde du Corps. And also the Guard Star is on the blade. Now, who was the Garde du Corps? Well, that was the #1 heavy cavalry regiment in Prussia, and those men also were the personal guard of Kaiser Wilhelm. These are the officers and NCOs that you see with the beautiful copper helmets with the big silver eagle on the top. And in order to be in the Garde du Corps, usually they were sons of wealthy aristocrats or whatever, and they tell me that you even had to present a financial statement to prove that you were able to afford the uniforms, because the uniforms were very, very elaborate. Whenever you see the Kaiser, especially on parade, you'll see him surrounded by these Garde du Corps men with the beautiful helmets and cuirass armor. This sword comes from my personal collection, and I'm very happy to have it. I think it's a great thing. It's so long I can hardly even get it in the scabbard here. And there, just to show you, there were more of them. This is another piece that's a little earlier, has 2 rings with a nickel scabbard. It's got a little age to the scabbard, but again, see the 3 bars here. Right away you know, that's Garde du Corps. And it's an immense piece, and it's also got a beautiful engraved blade, cuirassier, which is heavy cavalry, and the regiment that the man was in. Fantastic piece. I'll pull it out here, and you can see the length of it goes forever. Boy, is it. This guy must have been 6'4". And then on the other side too, it's very, very nice. It has his, in memory of my service time, done in a nice blue background. Beautiful things. And remember, it's called a palash. It's a sword, I know, but they call it a palash. And if you want to go to a show and you see one of them on the dealer's table, you could say, "Could I see that palash?" And then he might think you know what you're talking about. So anyhow, it's a little something that might help you. So if I can hardly reach this thing. The sword is so damn long. And that thing is short. So from the palash, we go to a rather unusual piece. It appears to be a Model 89 Infantry, but if you look at the eagle, you will notice there's no crown on the eagle. So you go, aha, I wonder what that means. Then if you look at it's in a nickel scabbard, and you look at the scabbard, it has a beautiful, fantastic etch on it. And it has the face of a lion, a very unusual design. So you say, well, gee, I wonder what the heck this sword is. What it is, it's a sword that was probably owned by an imperial officer, but after the war, probably in the 1920s, he was a member of a veterans club or some organization, and he had the permission to have his sword made in the original splendor, without the crown though, because the Kaiser was gone at that time. But he had permission to have that design on his sword, and had the blade etched, to reflect the organization he was with. So that's kind of a neat thing, something you don't see very often. And it looks like he most likely carried it into the Third Reich time, because it has a Third Reich portopee, officer's portopee on it, which I believe is original to the piece. So that's kind of interesting. And now lastly, I'll show you a couple swords here. This particular sword has a clamshell, and you'll see it's a very unique design. And if you look at the clamshell and study it, that is the coat of arms of Hesa. It looks like Saxony, I'm sorry, this is a Saxon sword. I said heck, this is Saxony. Saxony has the crest, it looks almost like a beehive. See how that is? And then when you look at the blade, you see the crown over this cipher here, which is the cipher of the King of Saxony. Very nice sword, not something you see all the time. And this next sword is Hesa. I was getting ahead of myself. Very, very beautiful. Just outstanding. The way the hilt is pierced like this, I mean, just tremendous. And again, you'll see there's a lion figure in the design, standing up with his legs up in the air. That was the Hesa design, and it has a lion head on the top with nice red eyes, and then it has a really really stunning blade, something that I think is kind of special. The blade is etched and gilded, and in English it says, to my son Friedel, on 1912, from his father. Isn't that nice? It must have been something that the proud father bought for his son, probably after he graduated from officer candidate school or something of that nature. But what a lovely remembrance to have from your father. And the sword is in mint condition, and we're talking here 1912. I mean, this sword has been well preserved. A really beautiful thing. The blade on the other side is plain. So with that, that gives you just an overview of German Imperial Swords. There's much more. There's hundreds of designs. And as I said before, it's a very complicated era. And in order to learn and feel comfortable with it, it takes a lot of study. And the facts are not that easy to come by. I mean, they do have books on the Imperial Army. There's a book by John Harrell that deals with German regimental steins, and I use that all the time because it does list all the regiments by number, by name, and it helps a lot with identifying these kind of swords. So next we'll show you some Imperial naval pieces. Okay, the last part that we're going to cover, and don't go away because I have a surprise at the end, but this last part that we're going to cover is on Imperial naval swords, and they're always very beautiful. Many of the wealthier people in Germany had their sons join the Navy because it was a prestige organization, and I guess it was cleaner too than being in the infantry or the artillery. Maybe a little safer too sometimes, but there were a lot of titled officers and wealthier people in the Navy, so you see some really kind of glamorous pieces. Not that you don't in the Army, but you see a lot of them in the Navy. But Navy swords are, they started about 1860 in that era, and by 1880, 1890, they had really developed some nice designs. And so I'm going to show you just a few of what you see from the German Navy, the Kaiserliche Marine. So with a naval sword, 99% of the time it's going to have a leather scabbard. They decorated the scabbard with these runs that go down the length of both sides on the edges with brass mounts and engraving to the mounts. Then they were equipped with a nice basket hilt that normally will portray the Kaiser's crown over a fouled anchor. The basket hilts can have fold down latches also. And then the head was normally, the pommel was normally a lion head, On this one, the eyes are put in with the casting and accented by a jeweler, but on many of them we'll see green and red to signify the nautical arrangements in the water's. The grips many times were ivory, and the reason for that was that beginning in the 1880s, 1890s, the Germans had colonies in Africa, and they brought back a lot of ivory. So it was not that it was inexpensive, but it was not that much at that time to buy them. And then the nice portapiece they used, which have red and black combined with the silver bullion of the knot. Now on this particular piece, it's also has the name of its original owner, which is lots of fun because you can research that, which I did here. It's pretty easy to do if you have the books or the internet. And a lot of naval pieces were equipped with a latch to keep them closed, just like the naval daggers also had a blade latch. And I suspect that was because of the fact that it was a moist atmosphere when you're on the water. And normally, naval blades will be found with an etched motif. Normally there'll be a fouled anchor in the center with nautical scenes, and they're very, very nice to look at. See, on both sides has the crown over, or no, on this one, is there a crown? Yeah, there's a crown over the anchor. One thing with the Kaiser's role with the Navy, the Kaiserlich Marine, he was in charge of the Navy, whether it was warfare or not. He was the boss of the Navy. This second piece, again, the leather scabbard. This one still has the sword cords used to hang the sword. It has a nice basket hilt with the crown over the fouled anchor, an ivory grip, and this particular piece does have the red and green eyes in the pommel. For you guys that have speedboats, you know about the red and green signals in the channels, so that's what that is. And a nice portapiece. These portapiece, everybody calls them gold portapiece. They're not. They're silver bullion thread, and over the years they patina to that gold color. And it's neat when you can find one with the original knot on it. Look how this guy, he must have spent years in his cabin trying to figure out how to tie that knot. But with this particular sword, it has a really tremendous damask blade that has a gilt inscription, and it indicates that that this officer was a member of the Sea Battalion, SEE Battalion, from 1884 to 1887. Well, the Sea Battalion was an elite group. These were sort of the modern day Marines that were aboard ships, and when the Germans wanted to take over a territory in a foreign land in China or Africa, these Sea Battalion people were helpful in gaining control of the initial entry, so to speak. A lot of times the Germans, once they had these countries, they called them protectorates, as though the Germans were protecting these people from something. So a sword like this with a beautiful Damascus, and the camera can see how nice that maidenhair Damascus is. It's quite beautiful. I believe it's also etched on the other side. I'll turn it over. Here on this side of the blade, we have some nice a presentation from this person, from one person to this person, done in 1912. Again, these were probably cadets from one cadet to the other. But a very beautiful thing, and you can look up these people's records and make a, figure out what medals they won, and you can make a display all around one sword. Try to find a uniform or insignia from a uniform that would be the same as the original wearer of the sword, and this is great stuff. I'll show you another piece here. This one also has the original cords on it. It has a folding basket hilt with the fouled anchor. You notice on this one the anchor is positioned horizontally instead of vertically. Gives it a kind of a nice look. And the red and green eyes with the portopee. And here we have this is a great piece. I gave you a glimpse of this before when we were looking at some things in my collecting room upstairs. But the Damascus blade is raised out with the dedication Dame Scheidenden. A Scheidenden is usually a retirement. So to our retiring comrade, Lieutenant, well, he was Oberleutnant Freiherr von Lillikron from the Officer Corps of the Marine Infantry. Now again, Marine Infantry was the elite. And then what's even better, though, on this beautiful Damascus blade, the different service times and places are all raised out on the blade. We can see that that this Lillikron officer, he was in Kiel on the SMS Deutschland. I was on the SMS Kaiser in Qingdao, which is China. Then in Berlin, he was at Wilhelmshaven. And lastly, at Cuxhaven, which was another harbor in Germany. And then it gives the years that he was there, which is just, talk about something fantastic. And the ability to research this officer. You have his whole career on the blade. Isn't that fantastic? I think it is. And I'll show you another sword that is one of my favorites because of the condition. It's a damask blade, just absolutely beautiful, made by WK&C with the knot, ivory grip, folding clamshell. But just look at the patterns in the blade. I mean, it makes you smile every inch that you look down. It's really a tremendous thing. I love it. And the reverse is in the same beautiful state. And then it has hammered fittings on the scabbard. Beautiful. The gilt is still there. The scabbard's still pretty fresh. And I'll show you one more that I love too. Just look at the blade on that. It just it's all band Damascus in absolute full mint condition. It's so nice, it looks like it's moving, doesn't it? They truly had the masters in those days. Obviously a blade like this would cost a lot of money, even though they had the people to make them. But the time involved to do that, it must have taken a month for somebody just to make that blade. It just is just tremendous. If you don't like that, you better collect stamps, because that's as best as it gets. Same on the other side, just incredible. Beautiful, beautiful. So with that, we'll end the presentation on the swords, and I have just a little surprise for you. For those of you that were able to stay awake through this lecture, I'm sure that that this piece is going to wake the sleep from your eyes. So, where do you see this? Well, collectors, I told you I had a surprise for you to see. I just got this gigantic eagle. It is an absolute masterpiece in the art of wood carving. It's 5 feet wide. Can you imagine that? And just look at the detail of the bird, the feathering, the way it's carved. It's made to look as well from the standpoint of view of someone on the floor looking up at it on the wall. It just is just the best thing that I've seen. If you look at the Hakenkreuz, look how that's carved out with a point in the center of all the arms, and the detail of the oak leaves, even with the wreath below it. The eagle head looks to the viewer's left, and it just is just tremendous. I've never seen anything as good as this piece and as big as this piece in a wood carving. It's virtually in mint condition. There's no repairs, fractures, bad hits on it, nothing. It just is a masterpiece. Can you see how the feathering is and the wings? And I mean, just you could stare at it for hours. It's so good. And the head, the way the beak comes over, the top beak over the bottom beak. I mean, it just doesn't get any better. Although maybe it does get better, because I'm going to show you the reverse of it and what's on it. So you ready for this? We'll spin it around. And over here and here, it's stamped SD Dienststelle Prague. And then also there's an inventory number here with a number written next to the stamping. Now we all know who was set up in Prague, and that of course was Reinhard Heydrich, and the SD, the Sicherheitsdienst, they were in charge there. It appears that there were mounts that at one time went down further. These mounts may have been put on later, I don't know. But whatever it is, it's all original to the piece. And I'll spin it around again so you can enjoy the view of the front of it. But here we have an eagle that it could come out of the castle that Heydrich stayed in that was over Prague, it's possible. Or it could have been in the main government building that they established there. I guess we won't know, but we do know that it was the property of the Sicherheitsdienst. So what a what a tremendous eagle. I hope you like it. I think it's one of the neatest things that I've ever acquired. I'm still toying whether to take the one down from my collecting room and put this one up, or whether to leave the one in my collecting room and sell this eagle. I don't know, but it is really, really great. I'm sure you'll agree to that. So there we are. That's the end of our sword presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. I wish I could show more different types of swords, but there's only so much time you can put into a video without everybody going to sleep. But I enjoy doing them. Please write to me if you like the video, or give me suggestions on what you would like to see in the future, because we intend to keep making these YouTubes. They're a lot of fun, and I must say I'm so thankful we've had so many people who never collected in their life that have started collecting because of these videos. You can't imagine how great that makes me feel. And I thank you all, and good luck to everybody, and spring is coming.